Welcome to Her Imprint, part of the Impressions Exchange. I'm Denise Gustafson, your host. This podcast celebrates the remarkable women who are transforming the printing industry. We'll explore their journeys, from challenges to triumphs, and share the stories that leave a lasting imprint. Today I have with me Liz Richardson. She's co-founder and co-owner of Indigo Inc. So Liz, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with me. To get us started, can you give us a little bit of background about Indigo Inc?
We started the company in 2003, and it's hard to believe that it's been 22 years because in some ways it feels like yesterday, and in other ways it feels like it was 50 years ago.
Always the case that time is so weird, right?
Yeah. And so we started out as more of a retail, like a Kinko's back in the day. My husband actually used to manage a Kinko's, and so that's how we got into the industry. But we quickly shifted into becoming a commercial printing company once we started figuring out a little bit more about the industry. We are a full service printing company located in Columbia, Maryland, although we service clients all across the country. And though we do service companies of all sizes, we do specialize in working with smaller smaller companies and definitely focusing on the creative community. So we have a lot of stationery clients, wedding designers, art, prints, you name it, anything that's related to the creative world. That's our niche.
So how did you get started in print? Why did you guys decide to just, out of all the different businesses you could have started, why print?
Partly because that's what Matt knew, but I used to be a geographer at the Census Bureau for 6 years. So I had experience with project management. That was my role there. And Matt, like I said, had managed a Kinko's. I actually had a side business as a wedding floral designer. I'd actually been a floral designer for a flower shop for a couple of years at a college just because I really enjoyed doing that. And I knew that arranging flowers was probably not going to pay the bills. And so we decided that a print company might be something we want to do. We have always been entrepreneurial. We knew we were going to start a company. We just fell into print as the business that we were going to do. We knew we were going to start a company. And the question was, what kind of company? And it ended up coming down to a print company. And I think, though, if we had known more about the industry at the time, I would have never had the guts to go that route. But here we are.
So you're in it. There's no turning back now, I guess, at this point.
There's always, we could always do something else. We're committed.
So geographer.
Yes.
I have to say that's the first time anybody said I was a geographer. I've had lawyers, I'd had human resource people, psychologists, psychiatrists, but geographer, that's new. So how did that relate to print
Oh, it doesn't really.
not at all?
We did print maps, but other than that, no. My transition into the business world really had more to do with my experience with project management. So as a geographer, I actually was doing more work with software development and managing projects that related to creating software that had to do with geography, like map, GIS. And so because that's the work I was doing, it did translate into business, but my interest really actually, when I was majoring in geography in school, was atmospheric science. I thought I was going to be a climate scientist. And I basically just decided, you know what? I don't want to get my PhD. I just want to go work. So that's how I deviated from that path. But my interest in climate science and the outdoors, I think, had a big impact on the way that we run our company.
So what do you mean by that?
We have been environmentally conscious before that was a thing.
Okay.
We didn't always know how to do that. So that's been an evolution, but we were always trying to be sustainable, not because it was a thing to do, but because we felt really strongly about it. And so it's still a learning process for us. It's not easy in this industry. I don't think it's really easy in any company, but yeah, that's been important to us from the beginning.
Because I know with printing, we're talking about inks, we're talking about chemicals. That's probably really hard to be sustainable or environmentally friendly with. I know a lot of inks and a lot of things say they are, but then when you really look at them, how close is that really to reality? How do you navigate that? Obviously, you have some of the background with some of that, navigating what's real and what's just marketing speak in some ways.
It's a challenge, definitely a challenge. In fact, I think it was around 2006 or 7, we actually purchased a DI offset press. That was actually, for many reasons, a very wrong move for us because we are a digital print shop. And so we thought that we would start to introduce offset into our little world, and it wasn't a good fit for us. But part of the reason why we wanted to do it was because of the fact that we could run soy-based inks. And it wasn't until we had the press that I started looking into it and realizing, oh, this has 10% of soy-based ink and everything else is terrible. So apparently, at the time at least, it was industry standard that it was okay to call an ink soy-based, just that content. But for a lot of reasons for us, that was not a good fit. So we actually ended up shutting that press down. It was a big financial mistake for us. Let's just put it that way.
That's one big learning curve in some ways, right?
Yeah. But also it's partly why we haven't really expand our large format because we didn't want to have solvent inks. We do have large format aqueous based and latex based inks, but the solvent inks are cheaper. It's just much more economical, so it's very difficult to be competitive. That's not something that we've expanded because of that decision, and I still have people coming to my door trying to convince me to buy a solvent-based machine, and I just won't do it, and think I'm hard-headed.
Honestly, solvent has its place in the industry for some people that need that kind of durability for outdoor, but a lot of things have moved to the aqueous. They've moved to latex. Maybe to a certain degree, whether or not it's sustainable, that's I think up for debate. But there are other options that do work just as well, I think.
Yeah, so it's been a challenge for us to navigate. For a long time, we've been using HP Indigo presses. We still use HP Indigo presses. A lot of people ask us if that's where our name came from. And what's funny is the name is a complete coincidence. We actually, when we started the company, we had no idea what an indigo press was. We started the company, we came up with the company name because we really loved a restaurant called the Indigo Grill in San Diego, which unfortunately went out of business, I think, during COVID. We loved that restaurant and we had gone to that restaurant around the time that we decided we were going to start a company. And so when we were toying with names, we are like, I really like that indigo name. Why don't we use that name? So it just came really by coincidence. And early on, we're running cannons exclusively. And we had clients asking us, hey, your name is Indigo. Do you have an indigo? And we're like, no, what's an indigo? So we started doing some research and we realized actually we need to learn more about this. And we realized that the quality that we were producing just wasn't hitting the mark. And so we started outsourcing our work to another print shop in our local area that had an indigo press and absolutely loved it. But let's just say they weren't the best print shop. They actually went out of business not long after that. Basically, it forced our hand to buy a press ourselves. And it was one of the best decisions we've ever made. We've been an indigo shop since 2005.
So basically, every time you upgrade and you just continue to keep up with the technology at this point.
Yep. Mhm.
So now for you, you came into this obviously from a completely different area, thinking about geography, project management for you is what you had your head around. Your husband was the Kinko's, a copy shop. Was there a particular turning point in your career that really changed the way that you look at the business or the industry?
Yeah, one big turning point for us as a company was when we purchased the Indigo Press, because I'd say that's when we started to become a real printing company.
You grew up.
Yes, we grew up. So that was a big turning point for us. But I think that the other big turning point for me and then ultimately the company was when I read Von Chenard's Let My People Go Surfing. And I don't recall the exact year. I think it might have been around 2008, but I'm not entirely sure. I know that it was before 2009. And like I said earlier, running a company as sustainably as possible has always been important to us. But I think that my eyes were opened when I read his book. about all the different ways, what that really meant. I don't think that I was going deep enough. And also, I think at the time I felt like my hands were tied and that there were a lot of things that really weren't possible. And so reading that book really changed my mindset on shooting for the moon, so to speak.
What things, I guess, did you implement based on that?
It was around that time that we started doing even more research about what was possible. And that's when we discovered FSC paper. It's terrible that before that we didn't really have a good understanding of FSC paper. Because we were a digital shop, we actually didn't have a lot of choices. The FSC paper was much more common in the offset world, but really just starting to become available for digital presses. And so we started really nagging our paper supplier. And of course, we're just a small shop in the grand scheme of things. So we didn't really have a lot of sway in the market, but we did pester them. And they really did do some research on our behalf and find some papers that we could switch to. Then it became our goal to be 100% FSC certified on all the papers that we carry in the shop. And within a few years, we were able to make that happen. Now, that's partly because the industry was starting to change and offer more of these papers, but we did have to take the initiative to make sure that's what we were using. That was one change. A lot of the other changes, I think, had to do with culture
Okay.
and being a positive place to work. I think when I entered the industry, I was actually pretty I want to stay positive, but I was shocked at how negative the culture seemed to be across the industry. My experience working at the Census Bureau was very positive, and when we started our company, I wanted this to be a positive environment, and it was. So we were hiring people from within the industry, and so they bring their past with them. There was just a lot of things that we needed to shift, and that book also helped me, and given the title, it helped me to think bigger and imagine what could be possible. When I was working at Census, it's not a manufacturing environment. It's a completely different kind of thing, and I think that when we started the company, there was a lot of disbelief that culture could shift in a manufacturing environment because there are certain realities of the process has to keep running and you can't just shut things down and take a break. And it was just very understandably rigid. But I was determined that we were going to figure out ways to make this work for everyone so that it was a positive learning experience for everyone. And that's been a very long journey. I'm still learning, but I've learned a lot and I continue to learn.
I think we are learning every day, new things, new ways to do things. For us, the technology continues to change. So that continues to add to that learning process in technology and innovation. On the culture side, there's been changes all around in regards to diversity and inclusion in other ways in terms of culture. Everybody comes in with their own baggage. It's a changing industry. There's the traditional ways of print shops that were 100 years old is different than a shop that might be 20 years old.
Yeah. So we had a lot of opportunity because we didn't have that 100 years of history.
Yeah, definitely. Now, given what you saw an industry maybe a little bit more negative than you wanted. You had some bumps along the way in terms of equipment purchases that you maybe shouldn't have made. Were there times when you just said, I'm done, I'm just gonna throw the towel in and just be done with all of this?
So as a business owner, unfortunately, that question goes through my mind more often than I care to admit. And Matt would say the same. In fact, a lot of business owners that I know, it's a common theme. But I'd say that the first time we wondered the recession of 2008, 2009 was rough. That was our first sort of big hurdle as a company. And I think that's when I first started to wonder, okay, do we have what it takes? Is this really what we want to do? But I'd say that the biggest hurdle for us as a company was in 2017. My husband and I, we started the company with a business partner. And it was around that time that we ended up purchasing our business partner and buying him out. All three of us at the time were very burnt out. We had just really worked ourselves to the bone and were not sure that we had any more in us. But Like I said, I was really inspired by Von Schnarr's book. And then after that point, I really started to read everything that I could get my hands on about culture, leadership, sustainability. I was still pretty motivated to continue to change the company in ways that we hadn't to at that point. I had a vision for where things could go, and I really wasn't ready to let that go. I think that's what motivated Matt and I to go ahead and buy Rob out because otherwise I think we would have just sold the
You're
company.
at that tipping point in a way.
Yeah. And so we did purchase the shares of the company. And I'm not going to say that I was naive, but it is hard. The amount of work that it has been, because it was only a couple years after the COVID hit. So the amount of work that the past 10 years, like usually the story is the first 10 years of your company is the hardest and then it starts to get easier. That has not been the case for us. And while I'm still motivated and I'm still in, it's been a lot of work and it's been a lot of stress and a lot of change, a lot of things that I just didn't anticipate, a lot of changes that are happening in the world that just have created new realities for us. So it's been a lot to navigate.
Want to level up your skills or empower your workforce? Meet iLearning Plus, the online education platform powered by our parent organization, Printing United Alliance. With on-demand courses and certifications, iLearning Plus helps print professionals stay ahead of industry trends, sharpen their expertise, and grow their careers. Whether you're elevating your skills or training your team, we've got the resources to keep you competitive. Printing United Alliance members save 20% on all courses and certifications. So get started today at ilearningplus.org and build a stronger future in print.
How do you navigate all of those changes?
That's a tough question, actually.
Because I think that's something everybody's wrestling with. Like you said, there's a lot of changes just even outside of the business that we're all dealing with economically. How do you navigate them? Is it
Yeah.
literally just one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, and you just deal with it as it comes?
I think that the answer is a paradox. I think that for us, what's kept us going is the vision that we have that we're trying to create, that we literally sat down, wrote down, shared with the team, and review on a regular basis. So we have that vision, but then also it's the day by day because just having the vision doesn't mean that anything's going to happen. In fact, sometimes having the vision can be discouraging when you're dealing with realities that seem to stand in the way of making that vision happen. And so it is, I think, having the grit and perseverance just to take it one day at a time. And I think for me, what has made the difference in being able to navigate this, honestly, is just integrating self management practices. 15 years ago, I didn't have to take an hour in the morning just to journal and decompress and get my thoughts together. I didn't need to. I could manage without it. But now, if I don't do that, it's a disaster. There are things that I've had to do and incorporate both for myself and with my team, check daily check ins with the team, lots of things that we're doing to help manage from a cultural and self management and mental health standpoint.
And then you layer on top maybe some of the misconceptions and things that you get just from being in a manufacturing industry too, that people, like you said, that people have come into the business with. Obviously, you're an owner, so you're in the C-suite as a woman. Your husband is your partner in this,
Yes.
but that's not a common thing that you see in the printing industry or
No.
even in manufacturing as a whole. I think when you're looking at some of the statistics, it's 29% of women are C-suite.
I think it would have been harder for me had I been paying more attention. That's some of the ways that I think I've managed is by really focusing on our own company and what we're doing.
Mhm.
And a lot of my support networks and professional networks are outside of the industry. I'm actually part of the CEO support group that called the Stakeholder Business Society. There are representatives of companies, various different sizes, smaller like ours, all the way up to $100 million a year. And so being able to hear their advice and their experiences and the way that they've handled things has been invaluable. And so for me, having that support network and also reading other people who have started companies and have done well, both men and women, having that kind of understanding and encouragement from others. So that's really helped, which has mostly come outside of the industry in my case. And I think that wasn't on purpose. It's just that that's where the resources were. And those were the people that I wanted to emulate and create a company that resembled something like what they had created. And some of them are in manufacturing, it's just not printing. So I knew it was possible.
Yeah, and honestly, in some cases, even though there might not be the same industry, companies of the same size or similar size, they probably have very similar issues or problems. Again, some of these manufacturing industries are older still. So, how do they deal with some of the traditional, we always used to do it this way versus now the newer technologies as they're coming in, whether it's printing or whether it's something else?
Yeah. One of the things that I was actually surprised to learn as I started meeting other CEOs of other companies was just how much we had in common and that we were all dealing with the same exact things, just slightly different flavors. That actually surprised me because I honestly thought, what's wrong with us? Why are we struggling with this? And we come to find out that's actually pretty normal. Everybody else is too.
Or yes, you're so many years in. Yes, it's normal when you're at the 15-year, 20-year mark to be
Yes.
dealing with this, that, or the other thing. I guess it's a good way and a way to think that, hey, you're not alone, that this is commonplace. This is normal. At least
Yeah.
you're in it together at this point.
Yeah, you realize, okay, there's nothing wrong with you. It can be a little discouraging knowing that, okay, everyone else is dealing with this too. We haven't figured it out one step at a time.
So in terms of the networking and some of the books, where do you find them? You say it's a CEO group that you have. How did you go about finding that group in the first place? And then where do you get your book recommendations from?
So, one of the best resources that I cannot recommend highly enough for any industry is there's a not that huge of a company called Zingerman's. They actually started out as a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And now they have several restaurants and other companies that are all in Ann Arbor. And one of them is called Zing Train, which is a training and consulting business. And though they're most well known for being a resource for the hospitality and food industry, they're companies of all kinds. Matt and I went to a visioning class, which is how we were able to come up with our vision that I referred to earlier. And the other half of the class was a bunch of engineers from Bosch.
Interesting.
There's people from all kinds of industries that have discovered them. They've been around for decades. And so they have been a big resource for us. We've sent employees there for training in leadership and management. And Ari had a blog that I follow and have been an incredible source of inspiration for me. But he is a big reader. And so a lot of the book recommendations have come from him, but also other CEOs that I've talked to have recommended books. And then some books recommend books. So it's just been a web that sort of has grown over the course of years. But I guess it really did start with the Von Schnard's book. And then I'd say not too long after that, it was Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and then just moved out from there. I feel like reading is a really important thing for a leader. If you're not learning, it's going to be tough.
The reading and networking are probably two of your key things that are really important to not only keeping you sane, but also navigating the business climate.
Yes. I guess a lot of the ideas that I've had to to try in order to navigate problems that come up have come from reading and learning because it builds like a catalog of ideas because the ideas aren't necessarily coming from my imagination. They're in my mind and I'm like, this company did this. Why don't we try that? I think that has been really helpful for us to navigate things.
Now, with you, especially with your passion for building a sustainable company, what legacy are you hoping to leave? It's early on talking about a legacy, but obviously you have a thought as to how you really want your company to be known and for what mark you want to make.
Yeah. I'd say that early on, I really was determined to be a sustainable company. And while that remains true, I actually feel even stronger about proving that a workplace can be a positive experience. I recently read a study, actually, the person who was talking about the study was quoting Bob Chapman from Barry Miller, who said that the number one source of happiness is having a good job, doing meaningful work with people you enjoy. And that really, I think, sums up what I feel bound and determined to do, not just for myself, but for my team. And I can't tell you, I mean, people that are friends and family that really have a very jaded view of work and that it's really just something you just have to put up with in order to pay the bills and that it's not really meant to be a positive part of your life. And that to me is really sad. And so I really want to disprove that idea and prove that work really can and should be a positive experience and that business can be a force for good in the world and not just an evil way to make money that we all just put up with.
A conscious capitalism in a way.
Yeah, and actually very involved with conscious capitalism as an organization. And so I'm learning a lot through my involvement with conscious capitalism. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. But I really feel strongly that the narrative needs to shift a little bit.
That work shouldn't be a drudgery. It doesn't need to be.
Yes,
It
it
can be
doesn't.
fulfilling. You can be passionate about what you're doing, and you probably should be.
Yeah, yeah, but it takes work to make it happen. And I've discovered that it's been a long journey to create that kind of environment for ourselves at Indigo, even though we were trying from the start. People are challenging. And one of the things that I realized not that long ago was that one of the biggest barriers for us is learning good communication skills amongst our team needs to be able to communicate well. And when that starts to fall apart, that's when people start to have uncharitable assumptions and miscommunications, and then you get drama and fighting. And that creates an environment that you don't really want to be around. And I think that I didn't realize just how much of a human project this was going to be.
Yeah, everybody comes into a situation with their own baggage, with their own background, with their own conceptions or misconceptions in that case. How do
Mhm.
you navigate that? Because you have to allow people to have their voice, to have their feeling with certain
Mhm.
situations, but how can you guide them toward being more positive?
Yeah. And one of the ways that we've addressed this is I started meeting with our leadership team once a week for the sole purpose of leadership development and teaching. And what I realized pretty quickly was that these are the kinds of things that everyone on the team needed to learn, not just my top leaders. And so we decided to start a weekly meeting on Thursdays. So we do daily production meetings, which are just 15 minutes, super short. And it's the whole company. We literally stop operations for 15 minutes and all communicate, but it's really just about daily operations.
Jobs have to get done,
Yeah.
what priorities there are, if there's
Yeah.
problems, issues, etc. So it's
Yes.
really just the logistical part of the business.
Yeah. Which is huge because
Yeah.
that also eliminates a lot of communication problems. But then on Thursdays, I decided to take the time to teach all those things that I was teaching my leadership team. And within about a year, I was like, I really don't think this should be the Liz show. Why don't we have everybody teach? And so we decided to assign everybody a Thursday, and they were not obligated to do it. If they chose not to, they could ask someone to do it for them, or they could ask me to do it. But the default was that they were assigned a time because if I did it the other way around, nobody would sign up. It was a little shaky in the beginning because some people were nervous and didn't really know what to say.
Public
But
speaking is like the
yeah,
biggest fear anybody could
yeah.
have, so understandable.
Completely understandable. So I really didn't know where this was gonna go. But within a few years, the team really started to get very excited about it. And I'd say most of our team members are very excited when their turn comes. And we have learned a lot. They surprised me with really great lessons. And they came up with the term Thursday TED Talk. I didn't come up with the term, but now that's what we're calling it. So I think that's also been a positive change, and it gives everyone a voice, and it's an opportunity for everyone to learn these skills that we all need to work on.
And you get to hear from everybody in the company at one point in time during the year, and they
Yeah.
can share their experiences and how it works and how they see it
Yeah,
as well,
exactly.
which is very cool. I would hope that people can take that as a little nugget and to be able to do something like that and pay it forward in a way.
Yeah, I hope so. We actually had one of our biggest clients doing a shop tour because they actually live one of them lives in Rhode Island, and they were down doing a shop tour because they, even though we'd been working with them for years, they hadn't actually visited the shop. And we were telling them about the Thursday TED Talks, and I don't recall if they actually were there during the meeting, but they were so excited to hear about it that they said, "Can you invite us to a TED Talk, like, through Zoom? Maybe you should open that up to your clients." I think they think that's fun. We haven't done that yet, but maybe that's gonna be version 2.0. We'll see.
Who knows? Once everybody's comfortable enough with the one we're
Yeah.
doing, right.
Yeah.
All right. So, in wrapping up, we've covered a lot of ground today. But my favorite question that I always ask is knowing what you know now. So, your background, starting back in college, moving through the whole decision to start the business, to buy the presses, to not buy the presses, to upgrade, to do all the things that you're doing in terms of sustainability and positive culture. Knowing all that you know now, if you were just starting out today, just walking in the door, what advice would you give yourself?
I said earlier, if I knew what I knew now, I probably wouldn't have had the guts to do what I did. So I probably would stay silent on a lot of things. But I think that I would tell my younger self, make sure that you're staying true to who you are because people are going to tell you, you need to be doing this, and you need to do that. And this is what you should, this is what a good leader looks like. And a lot of it is just, this is what worked for a specific place and time, and it doesn't mean that's what you need to do. I'd say stay true to yourself because you're going to have a lot more fun and enjoy your life a lot more if that's what you do.
And you're going to be more authentic to yourself. And honestly, that's going to help to add to your own passion and positivity and happy life.
Yeah, I agree.
Liz, it was an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. So thank you so much for taking some time with me.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to celebrate and amplify the voices of women in the printing industry. If you have a story to share or know someone whose journey deserves to be highlighted, we'd love to hear from you. Together, let's continue inspiring and empowering the next generation of leaders. Until next time, keep leaving your imprint. This is Her Imprint. See you soon.